Hello and welcome to another episode of World of Africa on WION World is One. I'm Njoka. This week we highlight the deplorable condition of prisons and correctional facilities in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has shocked the world after a journalist exposed the dire living conditions of thousands of convicted felons who were even jailed for minor crimes but are dying of diseases and malnutrition after their prison stay was illegally extended. The government says it is now taking action. But is releasing a quarter of the population from the overcrowded cells enough? We'll talk about that shortly. Thank you very much for joining us. South Africa, one of the most industrialized countries in the African continent, is struggling to fight crime. Communities across the country are under siege from violent criminals. Authorities are not in denial and citizens are pleading for tough measures from the government. Our correspondent Kalden Ongmu filed this report.
South Africa's new police minister has a lot in his trade. For the past months, even before the elections, videos of robbery with violence, carjacking, heists in clothing stores and banks have been awash on social media. The glare has been directed on the unemployed youth who have turned to wreaking havoc to thousands of citizens, leaving a trail of death in South Africa. But now, citizens are hoping that the new police minister, Senzo Mchunu, will turn the tide and use his muscles to fight the escalating crime in the country, especially homicide and murder. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, South Africa happens to be having one of the highest rates in the world. There were more than 27,000 murders last year.
The crime levels in the country are on the increase and are intolerable. We need to act decisively and bring this situation under control. The levels and type of crime differ from one province to the other. We need to take this into account as we implement the integrated national crime prevention strategy. It is our view and understanding that tough measures may need to be taken to reduce crime where necessary.
Crime has a global reach, and Africa is not exempt from its impact. The continent grapples with crime rates influenced by socio-economic disparities. Factors such as poverty, limited educational access, and economic inequality contribute to a climate where some individuals resort to illicit activities for survival. Certain African cities face significant challenges marked by high crime rates linked to issues like drugs, kidnappings, and armed conflicts. According to the latest update from Namibio's crime index, urban areas exhibit higher crime frequencies than rural or suburban areas. At least 5 cities in South Africa top the list in the index. Port Elizabeth, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, and Pretoria surpassed the 70% rate in crime globally.
Yeah, I think crimes are definitely a big issue in South Africa. I think, to the point where I think when you do things on a daily basis, you always have to keep that in mind. You always have to, you are almost paranoid because you see that at any moment you could be a victim of a mugging or, for some people, kidnapping or hijackings. So yeah, I think it definitely affects your quality of life.
I would say crime in this country is growing rapidly, and the government, I don't think, is doing enough to stop it because people are getting killed in front of us and then nothing is being done about that.
As the country grapples with crime, police uncovered an illegal military training base in Mpumalanga province with 95 illegal Libyan nationals. The authorities found drugs and weapons on site. In a separate incident, 4 suspects, including the farm owner and 2 Mexican nationals, were arrested in multi-million-dollar meth lab bust. Additionally, in the same week, the US sanctioned 2 South Africa-based alleged ISIS agents. Experts say all these incidents combined proves that South Africa has become a hub of criminal activities, and unless authorities deal with the criminals decisively, South Africans will never be safe.
Police say they are doing all in their power to curb crime, but without the help of communities, they will only be able to do so much. National Police Commissioner Fanny Masemola said organized crime posed a major headache and collaborations are needed to stamp out crime in urban areas where it is mostly prevalent. This is Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
The Democratic Republic of Congo released 420 prisoners from its largest and most overcrowded prison after images of dire conditions posted to social media by a recently freed journalist sparked widespread outcry. However, human rights advocates are denouncing the government's knee-jerk reaction as too little, too late, and a lot of reforms need to be done in the prison system of the country. Here now is a report.
Makala Prison, officially known as the Center Penitentiary of Kinshasa. The facility was built in 1957 to house 1,500 inmates. It now holds around 15,000, with the majority in pre-trial detention. Journalist Stanis Bujakera, once an inmate himself, shared images of overcrowding and poor living conditions inside the facility on his X account. Bujakera was released in March after a 6-month jail term on charges of spreading false information. Cell phone footage captured by Bujakera during his time in detention showed emaciated prisoners sleeping on floors of crowding cells and hallways. Others are seen drinking water directly from buckets near a well.
Today, Kinshasa has more or less 15 million inhabitants. So it's only natural that the number of prisoners should increase. What we are doing is looking at the extent to which we can drastically reduce the overcrowding, enabling us to completely refurbish the prison, while at the same time building another prison.
The overcrowding has led to dire health conditions. In early 2023, 66 inmates died in just 2 months due to malnutrition, suffocation, and a lack of medical care.
I've been detained here for a year without trial. The conditions are very difficult. The prisoners die every day. The people suffer here like you have no idea. The prisoners eat very badly, and the rations of the prisoners are often diverted by the prison officials.
A UN human rights official said more than 100 inmates have died so far this year in the underfunded and chronically overcrowded prisons in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The main cause of the deaths has been contagious diseases such as tuberculosis, which spread easily in crowded facilities and require unavailable medical attention. Food shortages also hit hard.
I've never been called by judges. I've been here for 17 years in Makala prison. I grew up here. I've never benefited from these grace measures, granted, but here the people suffer. We eat very badly. Everything goes wrong here. I paid $364 to have my judgment, but so far nothing.
Congo's prisons are among some of the world's most overcrowded. Poor funding is a common undercurrent. Congo's Human Rights Ministry says the government is aware of the issue and that efforts are being made to improve conditions and release inmates in pre-trial detention. Africa Bureau, WION World is One.
Let's head to West Africa. There is escalating tension between Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest man, this man right here, and the Nigerian government, with allegations of monopoly and product quality issues. We highlight the intricate dynamics of the oil sector and the impact of these disputes on Nigeria's energy security.
Nigerian legislators began a probe into the alleged import of contaminated fuel into the country. This as part of efforts to resolve issues causing a rift between an oil refinery owned by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, and the industry regulator. A legislative committee tasked with carrying out the probe is also looking into allegations of indiscriminate issuance of licenses and the alleged unavailability of international standard laboratories blamed for such contaminated products. The committee called on parties in Nigeria's petroleum sector to de-escalate tensions that have been deepened in recent weeks by accusations from the regulator that Dangote was seeking a monopoly in the market. The regulator says Dangote's refinery products are of a low standard. The 650,000 barrels per day refinery in the economic hub of Lagos is the biggest in Africa and was touted by authorities as a game changer that would end the oil-rich country's dependence on imported petrol. However, the $19 billion facility has been off to a slow start despite opening more than a year ago. It has had to source crude oil from other countries after failing to secure supplies in Nigeria, whose capacity as one of Africa's biggest oil producers has been impeded by oil theft and chronic corruption. A senior executive of the refinery has also accused international oil companies in Nigeria of plotting the refinery's failure. The Dangote refinery's challenges compounded last week when the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority said its product quality, along with those of other local refineries, was more inferior compared to that of imported products.
If I knew what we were going to get into, I wouldn't have even started it at all. And you can really see, honestly, we didn't have a single idea of what we were getting into. And that is why right from the beginning, we launched 31 projects, all concurrently. So, this one here alone is enough to give somebody gray hair, headache, and whatever. And, but it's like what I said, we're in the middle of the sea. If we stop swimming, we'll sink. The only option is just to continue swimming, no matter how tired you are.
Dangote denied both claims and invited lawmakers to inspect the plant where its product was tested. He said he did not receive any incentive from the Nigerian government regarding the refinery. He has also said he was calling off plans to invest in Nigeria's steel industry. It is not clear what is the origin of the rift between Nigerian authorities and Dangote, whose companies also dominate markets such as cement and flour. The dispute began after last year's presidential election that was won by President Bola Tinubu, who replaced Muhammad Buhari, a known ally of Dangote who had completed his tenure as president. Africa Bureau WION, World is One.
A non-profit group in rural Uganda says domestic violence is so widespread that it's hard to find a woman who is not affected. In this Ugandan region, most women report domestic violence, and signed pledges are being used to end it. Here's a report from Western Uganda.
This village in Uganda's west has a history of dark secrets that few talk about or share. Domestic violence is so common here that it's hard to find a woman who isn't affected. Uganda, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, has launched a campaign to educate communities. It recently staged a performance to highlight the crisis in this district. Villagers looked on as the man played the part of a drunk husband. Uganda's aim is to draw attention to the all-too-common real-life problem of domestic violence in Uganda.
We realized that some women keep quiet with their problems in homes unless they get somebody to support them, to move with them to the next level. Like, for example, those soul sisters, they say, no, if it means we can offer transport for you, with you, we go to court together, we go to the local council one together, then they give these women courage to speak out.
Violence is also often linked to a vicious cycle of poverty that deprives people of the basic requirements for life, including food, clothing and shelter, and frequently violence was linked to allegations of infidelity. In 2020, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics carried out a survey with backing from the United Nations. It found that 95% of women and girls had experienced physical or sexual violence, or both, after turning 15.
Last year, we had registered some deaths over gender-based violence, where this man had to murder his wife over things related to infidelity. Yes, he just suspected, which was not even true, that the wife was going out. So this man murdered his wife because of that. And that one is something which it's becoming common.
A rare prosecution of a man accused of terrorizing his household energized villagers in Sarakihombia. This was also the spark for Uganda's campaign to fight normalization of domestic violence.
The reason why I became a member, because it helped me, and I'm now settled. I also want to help those people who are in the same problem like I faced in the past.
Uganda has taken its mission to 10 of the hundreds of villages in this district, home to around 20,000 people. But it knows that its efforts alone will not be enough to eradicate domestic violence in the region. Most cases never even come to light. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
A number of farmers in Africa are turning to specialized soil scientists in order to combat increasingly acidic soil, which they blame on chemical fertilizers. With a decline in production due to poor soil, experts are advising a return to traditional agricultural practices to redress the balance. Here's a report from Kenya.
Benson Wanjala and his wife are cultivating their 2-acre plot of land on the outskirts of Nairobi. They are planting vegetables this time. This is a significant change from farming activities 2.5 decades ago, when Wanjala farmed a 10-acre plot in his native western Kenya village 370 kilometers away. Back then, Wanjala's land yielded a bountiful harvest of 200 bags of maize each season. But this abundance dwindled over the years to a mere 30 bags. Wanjala attributes this decline to the acidifying fertilizers he used, which he believes rendered his once fertile land lifeless and unable to support his family.
I was advised to apply manure, but I wasn't keeping cows at the time. Since I was wondering why the yield had reduced, I decided to move to Nairobi and start farming vegetables.
Priscilla Wakarera is a soil scientist and chief executive of REA, a soil health management company. Wakarera says many farmers double use of fertilizers if they experience low yields during a season. But if the soil's pH is unfavorable, the existing minerals in the soil cannot be absorbed by the plants. Adding more fertilizers just increases the problem.
We have very high soil degradation as a result of accumulation of fertilizer metals in the soil due to overuse of specific types of fertilizer. And what this does is it changes the soil pH to acidic. And when the soil pH is acidic, the plant is not able to absorb the available nutrients in the soil.
Many farmers in Kenya favor DAP, diammonium phosphate, fertilizer for maize, but its continuous use can lead to high soil acidity. Farmers say access to conventional soil testing is limited and takes as much as a month to get results. They also say limbing, which reduces acidity, is costly. For farmers like John Mburu Gitu, enlisting the help of a soil scientist is proving beneficial. Gitu saw his avocado farm's yield increase after soil testing.
If these microorganisms are killed, then clearly it's like saying that a human being without an immune system, you cannot be able, it's like a lifeless body. So like that's what our soils are right now. They don't have structure. They don't have enough microorganisms in the soil to help in nutrient cycling. So we have soils, but our production continues to go down.
The Food and Agriculture Organization reports that Kenya's maize production dropped 4% to 44 million tons in 2022, which meant raising imports to cover the shortfall. This issue of declining agricultural productivity is not confined to Kenya. Africa as a whole has 65% of the world's remaining uncultivated arable land. The African Development Bank says the continent spends some $60 billion annually on food imports to meet its needs. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
The Cape Town Opera is staging a graphic rendition of Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor in commemoration of their 25th anniversary, which debuted with a more traditional and more conservative version in 1999. Here's a report from South Africa.
This graphic rendition of the Cape Town Opera staging of Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor, there is violence, drug use, erections, masturbation and blood. Lots of it. Lucia is also pregnant in this interpretation. It comes with an age restriction of 16 and older. While opera in South Africa is by no means new, this company claims to be the only continuously active opera company on the continent. With the financial downturn and closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been curtains for many companies.
A lot of people would call it dark. I don't really think it's dark, though. It's just, that is opera at the end of the day. Bottom line is opera deals with death, taxes, sex, politics, love, lust, and everything else that goes along with it. But the way we've staged it is that it's also quite relevant to what is happening in the world today.
Modern and at times even graphic renditions are becoming the norm across the global opera landscape. The Cape Town House says South Africans would find many of the topics in this opera relatable, as it is a lived experience for many in the country. Themes like gender-based violence, mental health, substance abuse and corruption resonate.
There are more and more people of my age, 30s, early 40s, coming and watching the opera and being like, hey, what are we going to do? It's Friday night, there's something on at the theatre, let's go and watch an opera.
So when you've got these stars like Levi Sechapane, Golda Schultz, Pretty Yende, they're coming from having been raised on music and voice music and choral music, and they're literally just taking that and taking it that step further. So that's why I say that opera is, so relevant in South Africa.
Funding for arts in the country is running on a shoestring, and discussions around the relevance of Western classical music in Africa is rife. But the opera scene in South Africa is flourishing with an expanding international and local footprint. There are youth development schemes to productions like this, one with local casts. There's also a growing list of names well known on the international stage. Ultimately, performers believe that any kind of music, but especially the storytelling form of opera, is a way to bring people together in a divided country and share in the human experience. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
I'm Njoka. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Wild of Africa. Stay in touch with us on all our social media platforms and tell us about the show there. And until next time, it is kwaheri or goodbye from me.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions.